I choose you today, still speaking to Mary, in the presence of the entire heavenly court. And you thought this was private, didn't you? Imagine that. You're saying this alone in your room, you're at home, there's nobody else with you, and all of a sudden the entire heavenly court has been looking on and you just realize it. He is conscious that we never stand alone before the Lord. Our relationship with the Lord is never merely private. We always stand within the context of the church, whether other people are physically around us or not. The great cloud of heavenly witnesses surrounds us. And note the solemnity. This is not just a private deal between the two of us. I choose you in front of this great cloud of witnesses. You don't get any more solemn than that. You don't get any more formal than that. However privately we might think we are saying this, there's a formality and a public element of witness about this self-gift. And it has to be. To surrender one's life into the hands of the Lord is never a merely private thing. And how do I choose you to be my mother and my mistress? Both words are important for him. Mary's maternal concern and tenderness, and Mary's genuine authority. My mother and my mistress. You're not just the one who cares for me. You have a claim on me. You have a right over me. You are my queen, to whom I owe obedience. You are my mother, to whom I can run and trust. Not just one, not just the other. You are all of this to me. I hand over to you and consecrate as your slave. But we should remember, where did we first hear that word? Jesus, who takes the form of a slave for us and who obeys his mother. This is the notion of slave that Father de Montfort has in mind here. Complete self-gift made in loving and trust-filled surrender. My body and my soul. And now he's going to name the totality of the gift. And he's going to take pains to do this not because he's scrupulous and wants to encourage scrupulosity within us. It's by multiplying these expressions, we come to a sense of how complete the giftedness is. If I just say, I give you all of me, that's a little too quick, isn't it? And so he stops and begins enumerating so that we can feel the totality of ourselves as we say the prayer. My body and my soul, my goods, both interior and exterior, even the value of my good actions, past, present, and future, leaving to you an entire and full right to dispose of me and of everything that belongs to me without exception, according to your good pleasure. And who's the first who really said this? Jesus, who empties himself, taking the form of a slave. Hidden here in this enumeration of all that we're surrendering is this movement of being poured into Mary in something like the same movement of Jesus in his incarnation. Why? So that we can live in Mary as Jesus does. And in doing so, live unity with Jesus himself. And why do we do this? For the greater glory of God in time and in eternity. The glory of God alone is the motivating factor of everything. That God be glorified, I do this. Why? Because that God be glorified, Jesus does what he does. And if I would fully glorify God, that's what I must do. St. Irenaeus of Lyon, in one of his writings, had a very, very beautiful expression, and it was this: the glory of God is the human person fully alive. That's what this tends to. To be fully alive in the fullness of Jesus is to be fully alive indeed. Is to fully glorify God. And now, having made the offer, what does Father de Montfort do? He asks Our Lady to receive it. He doesn't assume. He doesn't leave it on the table and walk away. And now he says, receive, O benign Virgin, this little offering of my slavery. And having said all of that, we might think that's not so little. But again, he's conscious of before the full magnitude of the goodness of God, an infinity of who I am is still nothing. As enormous as this movement of self-gift might seem to me, compared to what I receive from the Lord himself, it is small. It's a big deal and it's a significant step. But it's in no small part significant precisely because I receive so much more than I give. This little offering of my slavery, and now look how he returns to Jesus. In honor of and in union with. Note now he makes the connection clear and explicit. As does Jesus, so do I. The submission that eternal wisdom deigned to have to your maternity. Even here, the linchpin is a radical act of identifying with Jesus. In homage to the power that the two of you have over this little worm and wretched sinner. Those are Father de Montfort's exact words. And in thanksgiving for the privileges which the Blessed Trinity has favored upon you. Note the motivations. In honor of and in union with the self-gift of Jesus. In recognition of the legitimate claim and authority that your Son and you both have over me. And as well to honor you, through whom so much grace and goodness has come to me. A multiplicity of motivations because the relationship is complex. And yet each one of those motivations has its own beautiful spiritual focal point. And now, Father de Montfort begins to make this prayer his own. I declare that I wish henceforth as your true slave. Notice, he's not going to go into this grudgingly. He's going to go into this willingly. To seek your honor and to obey you in all things. This is the program now. How am I going to bear the cross with Jesus? Step 1, to seek your honor, O Mary, and to obey you in all things. Because when I obey somebody else, what am I doing? I'm bearing the cross of sacrificing my own will. To honor Our Lady is to recognize that my own efforts to glorify the Lord don't go as far as they should. But when I honor her, and her voice gets lifted in thanksgiving to God, that's a much greater thanksgiving than I'm giving on my own. O admirable Mother, present me to your dear Son as his eternal slave. Note that this is a double belonging to Jesus and to Mary, but belonging to Jesus through belonging to his mother. Why? I already do belong to Jesus. He wants to deepen my belonging to him by this intense and intimate belonging to his mother. And so now, Mary, bring me to this greater depth of belonging to your Son. Present me to him now. Newly given over to him once again. So that having redeemed me through you, he may receive me through you. And again, everything we do corresponds to the pattern established by the Lord himself. Mother of mercy, grant me the grace of obtaining the true wisdom of God, and so include me in the number of those whom you love, whom you instruct, whom you lead, whom you nourish and protect as your children and your slaves. And you note in the prayer how Father de Montfort is very careful. He addresses Our Lady as the mistress with full authority and as the mother who is tenderly and intimately involved in the life of her children. O Virgin most faithful, and this conclusion is absolutely beautiful. In fact, these few words right here are a beautiful, short way of renewing one's act of consecration just by themselves. O Virgin most faithful, make me in all things so perfect a disciple, imitator, and slave of incarnate wisdom, Jesus Christ your Son, that I may come through your intercession and your example to the fullness of his age on earth and of his glory in heaven. Amen. It's a very, very beautiful prayer. And when one gets a sense of how it works, and the interplay especially of those three passages from Scripture, Philippians 2, the story of the prodigal son, and the statement on discipleship in Mark chapter 8, you get a full sense of just the real, even biblical richness that undergirds Father de Montfort's relationship with the Lord and his sense of belonging to him. And it can be a great help to have a sense of how a prayer like this works, either before one says it or after one has said it. Simply to sit with it and to take some time with it and to see that it really does outline all the crucial elements of a vital and living relationship with the Lord and Our Lady that need to be present. It's a beautiful articulation of the fruits of these 33 days. And and the other reality is sometimes we do this prayer and we say it in a group. The simple dynamic of reciting anything together with 50 or 60 or 100 other people is that we can't linger and chew on the words themselves, because that's not the way group recitation works. And that's fine. But that's also why it is worthwhile from time to time to step back and to simply live inside the text of the prayer and let that open for us the full richness of the spiritual life that it's reaching for and shooting for. The other addition to this that we'll be including in the final version for publication is Father de Montfort does something else with his prayer of consecration. And when one looks at the documentary history of various consecration manuals that have produced over the years, something does tend to get left out over time, and it's a matter of practicality. In The Love of Eternal Wisdom, where Father de Montfort first writes this prayer, this is the last thing in the book. And then he concludes the book, and by extension concludes this prayer, with two Latin quotations that are often not carried over into reproductions of this prayer. And those Latin quotations are from the Scriptures. We're going to bring them back into this because there's something fascinating about them. At the end of this prayer, and below the space where you would sign it and date it and everything else, will be found these words, first in Latin and then in English translation. Let him accept this who can. And then who is so wise as to understand these things? And if you think about that for a second, we've just gone through all of this and said all of this and then signed our name to it. And then what happens? This little nudge from the Scripture that says, but are you sure? Are you really ready to take this and to live this? Are you sure you got it? Do you understand this as well as you think? And it's kind of marvelous to just have those two little tweaks from the Scriptures with us, to remind us again, this is not the conclusion of anything except a preparation process. What it really is a beginning whose wisdom we need to grow into, the full acceptance of which is not going to come at the moment we say it, but is going to come in the act of living it and appropriating it on a daily basis afterwards. And so those we built back in, and that's why. So even after the act of owning it and saying, yes, this is mine, we get hit with that question of, really? Are you sure? Are you ready for this? How completely is it yours? Because again, 20 years on the other side of my having done this for the first time, I'm going to say not as fully as I'd like it to be. Who is wise enough to understand these things? Not me, to the extent that I would like to yet. But I don't need that fullness right away. I need to be ready to move toward it. Normally, processes of preparation for total consecration conclude at this point. We don't. One of the things that's most important in the new manual is the section that comes next, which is simply titled Living the Total Consecration.